So do you have a toilet that won't stop running like this one? Let's fix it. Hey everyone, it's Adam here, back with another DIY home improvement project. So today we've got our project is we've got a toilet that won't stop running, and it's a very common problem that I'm sure everyone has experienced, and it's one of those things that people tend to kind of ignore for a while, but it's such an easy fix that there's really no reason to put it off. So you might be able to hear, I don't know if you can or not, but this toilet is actually what this one is doing is that each time you flush it, it runs for, I would say, probably about 15 minutes before it finally shuts off. So most of the time, I'll take that lid off, the vast majority of the time, if a toilet keeps running, now you can hear it, it's because that flapper there, one of these, has basically gotten hard or has gone bad. And actually, I'm going to show you, but before I do that, let's go ahead and let's get the water turned off. Alright, so water's off. Now we'll flush it. Hold the handle so it drains as much as possible. Now we're going to need to deal with the rest of that water in the bottom there. And I'll show you in a minute how I take care of that. But so the majority of the time it's just this flapper. Like I said, sometimes they'll get hard. Sometimes they'll get it's kind of some, I don't want to say corrosion, but kind of some buildup on the bottom. In fact, this one you can see it's got kind of some gunk on the bottom. And I should say too, don't worry about sticking your hands in the bowl here. This is all just fresh water. Everything that's got any waste, it goes down to the bottom of the toilet. So this is really just all fresh water in here. So don't be afraid to get your hands in there. But the majority of the time, I'm going to say 95% of the time, if your toilet keeps running, it's because this flapper has gone bad. And it's very simple to take this off. As you can see, it's got this plastic tube here, has got ears on it. And you just take that off of there, take that off of there, and the flapper's off. You can buy them for, they're like $5, almost very, very inexpensive. So this one's fine, so I'm not going to replace it, but just go back in the other direction, reinstalling that ear. I have to use my right hand so you won't be able to see, but reinstall on the left hand ear, and then there's a chain. So when you hit your flush lever, that chain pulls up and actually lifts that flapper, and that's what makes the toilet flush. So you'll just need to adjust your chain so that it's, I guess look at it before you take it apart. But as you can see, it's got about an inch or so of slack in there. So you lift up, it's got enough pull that it'll lift it up, and then, but a little bit of slack in there so it doesn't hold on it. And if it holds too tight, then then it won't be able to flush. I've also seen before where maybe a little bit of this chain will break, rust, fall off, and it'll get stuck underneath the flapper. So you could have that situation too if it keeps running. Maybe you just need to have a little debris that needs to be removed. But in most cases, just replace the flapper, and the problem will be resolved. Now in this case, this is a little bit different situation. In this case, the fill valve here is the culprit. So what's happening is after you flush, normally the fill valve refills your tank here pretty quickly, so you're ready for the next flush. But in this case, for some reason, this fill valve has gotten, I don't know, it's corroded or something, and it's just very, very slowly filling the tank. So it takes probably at least a good 15-20 minutes because this thing is just seeping water as opposed to just filling quickly like it's supposed to. So what we're going to do is replace this fill valve, which is a little bit more work than the flapper, but not a lot. And you can buy these kits anywhere. I'll throw a link down below. I think you can get them off of Amazon for $10 or something. So I'll give you a link for that. But you can, should be able to get them at any home improvement store, Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace Hardware, anywhere. You should be able to pick these up for pretty inexpensive. So and this kit actually comes, as you can see, has a flapper and the fill valve. I'm not going to use the flapper as I already discussed. We're just going to use the fill valve. So give me a second here, and I'll go ahead and get this opened up, and then I'll show you how we're going to get this one out, and we'll go ahead and replace it. Okay, so we got this out of the package. Basically, you just have your fill valve, And then you've got a little bit of hardware. You've got a rubber gasket that goes between the fill valve and the tank. You've got a lock nut that we're going to put on the bottom underneath the toilet, and then there's a little, basically a little plastic deal that the hose clips onto so that it directs water down into the bowl there. So first step, we got the water turned off already. One tip that I'll give you is if you have a shop vac, take this, and what we're going to do, there's probably an inch or so or half an inch of water left in the bottom of the bowl. When you flush, it doesn't drain all the water out of that tank, and you need to get that out of there, because otherwise when we remove this fill valve, the water's all going to run out all over the floor. So shop vac is the handiest way to do that. If you don't have a shop vac, they've got a million uses. You can pick them up real cheap. I'd highly recommend it. So all right, so we're just going to stick the hose in the tank. We'll turn it on. Okay, so now we've got the tank empty. There's no water in there. And incidentally, I always do that if I'm changing a toilet tube, replacing a wax ring or anything. I always suck the water out of the tank. It just makes a big difference and saves on mess. So we're going to come down, and next step, there's a nut here that basically secures. So here's our supply line. A lot of times you're going to probably have a flexible supply line. This one happens to be rigid, but you should be able to probably take this by hand. And that one's a little bit tight, so I'm going to use a slip lock pliers. I'm going to back that off. There we go. Get our supply line out of the way. A little bit of water, keep some paper towels handy. But as you can see, that tiny little bit of water, pretty minimal. If we hadn't sucked the bottom of the tank out, I'd have water everywhere. So then there is, hopefully you can see, so there's a nut here, this white plastic nut. That's what holds the fill valve, secures it in the bottom of the toilet bowl. So we're going to loosen that up. And I'll just spin off of there. Okay, now we're going to come to the top. We're going to disconnect. There's this clip here. I actually probably try to reuse that, but we'll just pull that out and then give it a little wiggle into the sink with it. So there's our fill valve. Now, as you can see, actually this is, looks like this is actually the same brand, so that's good. Most of these fill valves are not all of them, but a lot of them. So this is the old one. This is the new one. So as you can see, it's obviously shorter, but you can also see that it's threaded here. So it's got an adjustment. So you can turn this out. Let's see if I can hold the camera with one hand and demonstrate. There's kind of a locking ring here. Pop that up, and then you'll just turn this. All right, so I'm going to turn this out, and basically I'm just going to match the height of the valve that we took out of the toilet. And once I get it to the right height, there, just take your little collar, slide your collar back down, and then it's locked into place. Okay, so once you get your length adjusted, there is inside the package, you've got a rubber hose, and you can just take your rubber hose, put it on the valve there. Now what I'm going to do, because this is actually a matching valve, I just pulled the hose off the old one. If yours is similar enough, you should be able to do the same thing. But if not, no big deal. Just measure out how long that hose should be and go ahead and clip that on, which I'm going to do here. It's probably a good idea to replace that hose actually, because they do get a little bit dry and brittle over time, but I've got a lot of this. I keep these. I'll throw these in my toolbox, and I'll have this around, so if any reason that ever starts to leak, I can always put it back on. So So what we're going to do is take this rubber seal here, and this actually goes down to the bottom of the tank. We're going to put this, run this up on the threaded section of the fill valve, and that's what actually creates the seal at the bottom of your tank. And drop it in there. And actually I'm just going to clip this on here because that'll kind of hold it back in place. You can see why it's easy just to reuse the same hose. Everything lines up nice. So then we're going to take our nut, go underneath the toilet, now I'm just gonna, what I'm gonna do, this, you know, everything's plastic here as far as this nut and this fill valve. So even though I needed a little bit of force from the pliers to put it on, I'm just going to hand tighten it as tight as I can get it. And that should be, there, that should be tight enough to prevent it from leaking. Now, after we get the water back on, we'll check that and make sure that everything is dry. And if you see any leaks there, you can always give it a really light turn with the pliers, but you gotta be really careful anytime you're dealing with plastic plumbing parts, because the plier will crack them easily. So now I'm just putting the nut for the fill valve back on. I'm using the pliers here because my hands are wet, so I can't get a good grip. Again, just be careful. Just go till it's snug and then stop. You can always tighten it up if you have a small leak. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Now, before I turn the water back on, I always like to get everything dry. It's hard to look for leaks if you've got any residual water that dripped out. Kind of clean up your area here too. But if you get everything dried good, then you can reach back there with your hand and very easily tell if you've got any leaks. So, all right, got that good. Now I'm going to turn the water back on. Like, turn it on kind of slow, don't just slam it on. Now we're going to let this fill. I can already tell that it's filling about 20 times faster than it did before. And while it's filling, I'll show you there's an adjustment here. And this adjustment you can turn. And what that does is adjust the height of your float. And so the lower this float is, that'll come up and it'll turn your water off. If you feel like you don't get enough water in the bowl, then you can adjust that float up, and it'll basically let the fill valve will put more water in the tank before it shuts itself off. And what I like to do, so this pipe here, I like to get it so the water is just a little bit below the top of that. You don't want it so full. If it just runs there, if it runs over the top, the water will run constantly and you won't have fixed anything. But for kind of a maximum, flush volume, you want that to be pretty close to the top. So you can see that's right on the edge, on the top of that. So if I would turn this now, so it looks like turning it clockwise actually raises it. So if I turn it counterclockwise, I'm kind of simulating I'm gonna get some water out of the tank here. Just kind of a half flush. So there, because I turned it counterclockwise, it actually raises the float, so now you can see the water is not quite as high on that tube. So, it's about ½ an inch or so below the top. Maybe put a hair more in there, but that's somewhere in the ballpark of where it should be. I'll give it a test flush. Let it fill one more time. And while it's doing that, I'm going to come down below and check for leaks. Look for leaks, but the best way is to feel for them. Your hand will pick up that water very quickly. like everything's dry. Check down here too, because when you're moving your supply line around, sometimes this joint here might get a little disrupted, and you might have a little bit of a leak there. You might need to tighten that up if it wasn't good and tight before. I don't see any leaks. Seems like we're in good shape there. And I'm going to do a little bit more adjustment because it's still a little bit higher than I'd like, but you get the point. I'm going to turn that down so next time I flush it won't be quite as high. But put your lid back on your tank and problem's fixed. Well, there you go, guys. Hopefully you found that video helpful. As you can see, super easy to fix a toilet that won't stop running. Should be able to pick those parts up anywhere. I'll leave a link down below so you can check out if you want to get them from Amazon, but otherwise any home improvement store should have those. You can pick them up real easy. So hopefully that was helpful. If it was, do me a favor, hit the like button. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.